everyone, and greetings from Australia. Welcome back to our channel. My name is Ruth and I am an Australian immigration law practitioner here in Australia. Well, in today's video, I would like to share with you 5 steps to skilled migration under the sponsored state or territory stream. Now, please do not treat this as legal or migration advice because we assess each case on a case-by-case basis. However, we hope that the contents in this video will provide you with a general overview as to what you need to do to pursue the skilled migration process via state or territory sponsorship. So let's get started. So what are the 5 steps to skilled migration under the sponsored state or territory stream? Well, step number 1 is look at the state or territory's requirement. Now, for those who may not be familiar with Australia, so Australia is a huge country. It's big and it's beautiful. That's why I'm here. So Australia has got different states and territory. We have 2 territories and then we've got multiple states. So what happened is that each state actually negotiated with the Department of Home Affairs, which is also the Australian Immigration, to say that they will choose to sponsor applicants from particular occupations if they meet certain requirements. And for that reason, each state will have a different criteria to sponsor a skilled migrant, and usually they will also have a different criteria for the different occupations. So it is very important that you look at the different states to see if they can sponsor you on your nominated occupation. And if so, the next question would be, do I meet the requirements? And if you do, then you can pursue that process. But if you don't, then perhaps you want to look further and see if the territory or another state would accept, would be willing to sponsor you. So each state and territory has a different requirement depending on the occupation. Sometimes the states or territories will impose a different requirement for English tests. For example, immigration will require you to have only competent English, but certain states or territories will say, well, we need you to show proficient English. And for that reason, you will have to make sure that you meet that particular requirement. Certain states or territories might also require you to meet the residency requirement. For example, some states will say, if you're in Australia, then you should not have lived in another state for the last 6 months. So essentially you have to move to this other state and work and live there before you can actually get sponsorship and meet the minimum requirements. And that's understandable because, see, the state they're actually putting out an effort to give you additional points and sponsor you in your visa. So obviously they will expect you to be loyal, to contribute to that particular state. So I can understand where they're coming from. I always tell my clients that some states are jealous of your presence. In certain cases, they will also have special requirements such as your qualification. For example, certain states will say, well, we will sponsor you if you are a graduate of in this particular university in our state. Some would say you just have to show a bachelor's degree, but in some cases they will say, no, you have to be a PhD graduate. Some would say, no, just a master's degree will do. So basically they want to sponsor the best of the best talent in Australia. In some cases, they will consider sponsoring if you have lived and worked in Australia, or run a business. So there's a new stream that's been introduced. It's called the SBO, which is the Small Business Owner Stream. For example, in Queensland, the government will sponsor you with an additional 15 points for a 5-year temporary visa if you have spent $100,000 buying into an existing business run it for a minimum of 6 months, employ at least one Australian to work a minimum of 20 hours a week. But at the same time, you need to be able to show that you have either got family experience. For example, your parents were business owners. So it sort of runs in the blood. Or if you've got the qualification to run the business. So if you do that, then the state of Queensland will consider sponsoring you and give you 15 points toward your state sponsorship application. In some cases, for example, in Tasmania, for example, which is down south, for those who haven't been there, if you are from overseas, usually depending on the occupation, they may sponsor you if you have a job offer that is in line with your skills assessment. And your employer, can show that they are struggling to find a local Australian citizen or a permanent resident to fill the position. So it all varies. Like each occupation is different, so it gets a bit confusing. But if you need help to maneuver through the complicated immigration process, just contact us by email, or you can also submit a form, and we would be happy to assist you. And also English requirements. So certain states or territories will have different English requirements. Some of them will require to work in Australia, whether it's a regional area, for example, if you've worked in regional area of a particular state for, let's say, 6 months or 12 months, and you have a job offer to continue in that role, then potentially the government will consider sponsoring you as well. So it all depends on the situation. It's very unique. So that's step one. Step two, you must meet the Department of Home Affairs requirement. So the Department of Home Affairs is also the Australian Immigration. And obviously there are a lot of different requirements, but we're just going to go through the 3 requirements briefly. Number 1, you must go through the skills assessment. And this is conducted based on your occupation. So each occupation has a different skills assessing authority. For example, if you're an engineer, then you will be assessed under Engineers Australia. If you're an accountant, then it would be CPA Australia. If you're a lawyer, it would be through the Law Society of your state or territory. So it really depends on your occupation, but usually I would say even before you start doing anything, make sure that you've done your skills assessment. At this point, the length of validity for your skills assessment result is 3 years, which is fantastic. So even if you have it up front and you start to pursue and you start to take your English test or other kinds of pursuits later on, your skills assessment potentially will still be valid by the time you apply for your visa. So that's a very, very good investment. Time skills assessment can be a complicated process, and that is why I always recommend my clients, if you are able financially to invest in using a reputable immigration lawyer or a migration agent, because they know the process. Because if it's not done properly and you fail in that process, then you can't even move on, because without skills assessment, there's no skilled migration. So that's a very important process. And if you need help, just let us know, because this is something that we can assist with. Immigration's requirement, firstly, skills assessment. Number 2, English tests, very, very important. And finally, the points test. So at this point, the minimum points that you have to score is 65 points. And points are allocated for various factors such as your age, your qualification, your work experience, whether you studied in Australia, whether you're single, or if you have a partner, if your partner speaks competent English, if you are a qualified translator, etc. So I know I've sort of gone through that fairly quickly, but I've made another video, and in that other video I actually go through all the requirements and the points eligible, so you can click on this other video and see where you're sitting at in terms of the 65 points requirement. And after you've met the points requirement, you would go ahead then and submit an expression of interest. So that's step number 3. So step 3, submit an expression of interest. So unlike the other types of visas like work visas or family visas or partner or student visas, with those kinds of visas, once you've met the requirement, you can go ahead and lodge an application straight away. But with the skilled migration, it's very different in a sense that you actually have to submit an expression of interest. So as the name suggests, you are essentially expressing your interest to apply. You're saying, hey, I'm Ruth, I've got 65 points and I'm interested to apply for this visa. And so what happens then is Immigration Australia would look at the amount of candidates who have applied, and then they will see who has got the highest points. And so essentially they have a quota system in the sense that they will say, okay, well, this month we will take in 10 engineers, for example. So if you submit an expression of interest and you have, let's say, 65 points, but somebody else who is your competitor has 100 points, well, obviously they're going to get chosen first. And so essentially the expression of interest process could be anywhere between a few days up to 2 years. And in some cases, clients never get, applicants never get an invitation to apply. And for that reason, we always advise our clients, do everything you can to get maximum points possible. And if it's not working out, then we need to think about other types of visas, such as, do we want to go for a work visa, for example, but through that you have to have a sponsor to sponsor you, etc. So so the expression of interest process is a rather interesting one, and also it is so important that you have met all the requirements before you submit an expression of interest. For example, if you say that you have 10 points for English test, then you have to show that you've already met the requirement before you submit the expression of interest. But the benefit, the good thing about expression of interest is that in the future, so let's say if you have 65 points and you submit an expression of interest, but in the future you do another English test or you become a translator, for example, then potentially you can go back and update your expression of interest, and with that it would bump you up the system, and so your chances of getting an invitation to apply might be a lot quicker. Okay, so that's step number 3. Step number 4, once you get an invitation, you need to apply to the particular state or territory who has chosen to nominate you, and you have to apply within the given time frame. Now, depending on the state or territory, some states will give you 14 days, and that's not a lot, 2 weeks to get everything ready. Now, that's why it's so important that you have already done your skills assessment, you've already done your English test, and so you've got everything ready, okay? And most states will also want to see that you're actually committed to the particular state or territory. So with that, what we normally do is we advise our clients to write commitment statement to say why they love the place, how they think they can contribute to that particular state, etc., etc. In some cases, you also have to pay a fee for the state to process your application, and if you pass that, if you're approved of your state nomination, then what happens is that the state will usually contact the Department of Home Affairs. So this is the actual visa. So when you apply to the state, it's not the visa yet. It's just to apply for them to nominate you, okay? But once you've had that's approved, then immigration will then contact our clients and say, hey, we're gonna give you 60 days now to apply for your visa. And so that's the time where you can submit your visa application. And with that, it's so important that you have all your documents right, You fill out every information to the best of your ability, and you have to meet other requirements such as character, health requirement. There's a whole heap of requirement, but that's really the last process. And once you've submitted the application, you would then wait for a visa to be granted. So skilled migration is not easy, but it is very rewarding if you go through all the steps correctly. And can I just say, having gone through the process myself, I feel that all the stress, all the investment, I would say, all the studies, they were all worth it, because Australia is such a beautiful country. I mean, we feel so blessed to be here. I mean, it's fresh air and just a really amazing country to be in. And that's why I've chosen to practice in immigration law, because I used to practice in other types of law, but this is the passion. So I hope that the information shared today would assist you and give you some brief guidance as to what you need to look out for. But to quickly summarize, step 1, you need to look at the state or territory's requirement. They have different requirements for different occupations. Step 2, you need to meet immigration's requirement. So that would mainly be skills assessment, English test, points test, and also you need to be under 45. Okay. Number 3, submit an expression of interest once you have 65 points or more. Number 4, once you're invited to apply to the state or territory within the given time frame. And once you're approved, immigration will send you an invitation, and that's step 5. You would apply for your visa, and then you would just wait for your visa to be granted. So I hope the information in this video is helpful. And again, please do not treat this as legal or migration advice, because each case is different. If you need specific advice for your case, you're not too sure about certain things, just drop us an email on the email address below, or submit a form on our website, and I'll be very happy to assist. But thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and all the best.